Sam and Sally Ballard live year-round on tiny Chebeak Island. Chebeak Island lies just 7 miles off the coast of southern Maine, or as the crow flies, about 20 miles from Freeport, Maine, and LL Bean. No bridge connects Chebeak Island to the mainland, so all the comings and goings must be by boat. Sam met us on the mainland with his sailboat, Mandiamo, Italian for lover of the world. And we cruised the 7 miles to Chebeak Island, arriving just in time for a glorious Maine sunset. Sally and Sam enjoy the reclusive lifestyle in Chebeak, and they share a love of language. Both are published authors. Sally writes poetry, and Sam writes autobiographical sketches, essays, and stories. We asked Sam if, looking back, he thought his life's journey had been successful.
Oh, absolutely. But if somebody had asked me to characterize what a successful life would be, I would have got it wrong.
To make sense of his life, Sam turned to writing. He spent more than 10 years writing a modern-day love story entitled Burning Down the House. But its working title seems to be a bit more descriptive. 4 Marriages, Love, Making Love, and Dreams, a memoir. Sam writes very candidly about growing up in a privileged but dysfunctional Midwestern family, and then spending the greater part of his life searching for identity in 4 marriages. He writes about his search for love, finding love, and then losing love, and at last discovering a great love with his 3rd wife, Jane. 1 year after Jane's death, Sam married Sally, Jane's closest friend, and the love that he found first with Jane continues to grow and flourish with Sally.
I'm Sam Ballard. I was born on July 6, 1931. The 7th child on the 7th month on the 6th day. I started out to describe the many dysfunctionalities in my family, not all that consuming, sort of standard dysfunctionalities. Found that soon enough to be dull and not worth talking about, not worth writing about. But then realized that what I wanted to do was to make as clear as I could to the reader, to have them experience a bad marriage followed by a very, very good marriage, though be it short, and then a continuation of the world that I had built in that relationship with Jane's best friend, who is Sally, my wife.
Sam and Jane were together for only 6 years before Jane lost her battle with breast cancer. Sally and Sam have been together now for over 20 years, and through daily conversation, they keep Jane's memory alive.
I could find myself in a relationship, a very intimate relationship with these 2 women. And that, I think, has been the center of my life.
Sam and Sally built their dream home on a beautiful waterfront lot that has been in the Ballard family for many generations. Sam's son Tim, now a practicing architect in California, designed the home to fit their unique lifestyle. Their home is spacious and open, with spare writing studios for both authors. Sally's studio is on the first floor, just off the kitchen. Her room is well lit, pleasant, and the walls are lined with books. Sam's studio doubles as a spare attic bedroom. The room is dark and moody and has the feel of an artist's garret, inspirational and romantic. Sally and Sam are grandparents. At times, their home feels more like a bed and breakfast rather than a writer's hideaway. We met Stephanie, Jane's youngest daughter, who came to visit with her husband Brian and their son Fletcher, the youngest of all the grandchildren.
What is that? That's a good time, isn't it, Fletcher?
I'm not sure what I'm going to title it. The bench sat near the river, sat through rain, snow, and the heat of summer, solid, worn, speaking of a man, a kind man whose ashes now ride the river as he once predicted. Ashes poured from a container by those who love him. A memorial for him with his words imprinted. Now an afternoon romp by someone bored with life, whose day saw no purpose, has used strong arms to grab the bench and heave it into the river. That done, he turns and walks away, leaving the bench sinking into the water, sinking into the warm river which carries the ashes still.
My name is Sally Ballard. I was born in 1932. Did you say place of birth? Is that just Lewiston, Maine.
So you lived in Maine all your life?
Well, I started out in Maine, and then I moved. In my first marriage, I moved to Massachusetts, and we moved around a lot to Connecticut, and then back into New Hampshire, and then eventually I came back to Maine. Jane, I always admired her intelligence. She was a very intelligent woman. But she was also a wonderful friend. She was there for me when I was getting divorced, and she was a very dear friend at that time. She was very compassionate person. A combination of strength and gentleness, which was made her so special. After Jane had separated from her husband, she became acquainted with Sam, not right off, but soon after that. The first time I met him was at a party that she gave to introduce Sam to all her friends. We came into the house and there was this man sitting on the couch. Well, Sam has a lot of energy, obviously, but he really had even more energy in those days. And he was kind of sitting on the couch looking around, and I said to myself, who has she picked up now? I was really, little did I know that a number of years from then I would be married to Sam Ballard. That was the furthest thing from my mind. But that was my first impression. But then I quickly learned that he was also a bright man and someone that was very alive.
Oh, I can remember that. A dear friend said, gee, I know this friend, classmate, why don't you give her a ring? Actually, I wrote her a letter, and she answered, and then I wrote another one, and rather than answering me in writing, she called up and she said, this is ridiculous, why don't you come over? Let's talk. Walking in to her house, I felt I was looking at a goddess. What immediately captivated me was her self-assurance, the way she held her head. And that very first impression has remained with me, God. And I think we both knew this was going to be serious. It was for the first time that mind and body came together. She was clearly beautiful to me. She was deeply desirable. I loved what she had to say. So the words and the body, the facial expressions, the way her eyes would sparkle, the way she'd turn her head. and she would watch me watch her. We were unafraid to be captivated by each other. That was new. I felt, son of a bitch, I have finally grown up. I have finally grown up. That here was a person in front of me, a deeply attractive woman, but an absolute certain sculptured personality that was not going to change in any way, shape, or form. And this gave me a sense of self-assurance. I was much more shy than she was in many ways, and she loved teasing me. Oh, God. It was just fun for her. And it was fun for me because I knew it was safe. She made it abundantly clear to me that everything about me was becoming deeply important to her. It was absolutely open. We loved each other's presence, and she wanted me there.
My first impression of him was that he was intense and that he had a lot of thoughts that he was willing to share with everybody, and he was a good match for Jane because she was that kind of person too in many ways. She was outspoken, and I could see that they were well suited.
The reason the first marriage failed is that I obsessed on this woman who would be, I guess you could say, the mother figure I had not had. I don't know why she married me. I know why I married her because I projected onto her a person that I assumed in time would be able to communicate with me. And it never, ever happened. Part of it is being young. You are indeed blinded when you fall in love. Perhaps the chief aspect of it that you're blinded to are the risks of pain. I was younger. I'd hardly grown up. And yet I'd had 17 years of a marriage underneath my belt. Having written about it, my understanding of the experience was looking at Diane, looking at myself. I did not put either of us at fault. As that marriage collapsed and I walked away from it, I felt I had, at that point in time, I felt I had learned nothing. The thing I had to accept was that in terms of what I cared about within the marriage, one of the things I cared about is I wanted my children to flourish, and they were flourishing. I didn't believe that a relationship could have such pain. I had no idea how to deal with it. And we used to talk about that, and she'd ask me, why don't you leave? And my answer was very simple, I can't. And Diane's response to that, and I give her a lot of credit, was to say, then I'm leaving. And then the question was, would the children remain with me or not? And she surely did love them. There's she was and had been a good mother. And I first said yes. And then I realized who my stepfather and my children would be, and I said, I can't do this to my kids. Absolutely cannot do this to my kids. And Diane's response was, okay. Diane was much clearer in her mind as to the line she would not cross. And that threshold, that line, that boundary was who would have the children. And once I made the decision, she never, and my lawyer kept saying, you know, she can go back on that anytime she asked for the children back, she'll get them back. And I knew she wouldn't. And in an odd, strange way, she was true to herself in a very powerful way. And I can say now, looking back on it, I can acknowledge that. I couldn't quite acknowledge it at the time, and seeing her with me and the children, I suppose you could say in that context, the relationship was entirely successful. I never used, this is the first time I've used that phrase about that marriage, but it was. I was able to stop the process of her causing me pain. I jumped right away into a second marriage as I felt absolutely certain that this could be better. Finished the second marriage and said, well, no, it couldn't be better. Jane, now life took on a whole new form. We were immediately engaged.
She helped him face things more than he ever had before. Plus, she was a good woman. And I'm not saying the other two women weren't, but I think they had their own problems. This woman was very mature. And he helped her maybe be a little more gentle than she had been, because she was so strong and firm. Sometimes the gentleness didn't show through. And I think he helped her with that and helped her to relax a little bit. They were a good match that way. And they were both hurting people, too, when they met. Her husband had left her. He'd had a tough time with marriage. And they came together, both in pain, and were able to help each other's pain.
It was clear to me that immediately when I saw Jane, I didn't have to make myself over in any way, shape, or form. She said to me, Sam Ballard, enter my life the way you are. I said to myself, I sense that, and I can give up role-playing in this marriage. In that way, I changed.
They could confront things that might be a problem and deal with it rather than put it under the table. Jane would not allow that. I mean, you didn't put things under the table. You dealt with things. And he learned to do that with her. And he's also, so therefore Sam and I can do that too. It was her gift to both of us too. He was very much in love with Jane. They were very happy together. And I knew that she had had cancer and it could recur. So I thought it was just wonderful that she had him in her life.
She was a little bit ashamed of herself because she recognized that she had a lump in her breast and she didn't tend to it soon enough. And she recognized that that was probably fatal. That if there was any sense of pity or sorrow, that would just absolutely just wipe the whole relationship off the table. And both of us knew that was not a problem.
The fact, number one, that she was diagnosed with recurring breast cancer when they were married, and he had to decide if he was going to marry her and have maybe another loss. I mean, I wasn't going through this with him, but I know that that was what he was thinking. And he decided, yes, I am going to do that.
Could we make it work? It had tremendous risk, and there was no question with either of us that it was a risk worth taking.
I think Sam was very innocent and naive in many ways sometimes when he was younger.
No hesitancy. I can still say it. I had some good friends who would say to me, "Oh, Sam, are you making another one of your intuitive leaps?" And my answer was, "You bet, you bet."
She helped him a great deal, and he helped her by being there. I mean, her husband had, it had been tough, and so she wasn't alone, and she was with a man that loved her very, very much.
night we made love, we got in bed and she was lying nude. She threw back the sheet and she said, "Now look over here. Here's where they remove the breast. Now you see these spots?" And she described it to me. This sort of odd coloration to them. Just be careful. Don't touch over here. On the other side it's all right, but over here it's still a little painful. It was that, and she loved it that I had a hard time dealing with that. I'd never been with a person that was that direct. We were in Maine, and her two daughters were with us, and Jane was getting dressed in the morning, and she still was bare-chested, and she looked down at herself, and she said, "How about that, Sam, an intellectual flat?" She just loved that. And I would sort of get crimson in embarrassment and said, "Okay, yes, I'll cover it up, I'll cover it up." But there was never a slightest bit of hesitation. I mean, she was been brought up by a doctor. And guess what? Personalities are housed in bodies, and let's never forget that. Put the two together.
It was a blessing. I remember somebody said after she died, "Thank God for Sam Ballard that he was there for her through those last years." I think I really became the closest to Sam and Jane the last maybe 2 years of her life, when we knew she wasn't going to make it. My marriage kind of ended at that time, so I moved. The place that came up for me to live was in Hollis, New Hampshire, about 2 roads over from where they lived. It had nothing to do with because they lived there. That was what opened up. It was really weird, before I knew she was as ill as she was. And so I was right there, and I would spend like Friday nights with them. We'd go to the movies or something. They were so wonderful to me at that time. As time went on, and Jane became more ill, I believe, and maybe Sam has said something about this, I believe she was planning on Sam and I being together. Because now, looking back at the time, that was nowhere near in my mind. But she would, when we would come up here to Shebeig, she would insist I come along because she didn't want to, she thought she needed me, she said. Well, she didn't really need me. And then she'd say, "Why don't you two go sailing? Because I'm going to lie here and sleep, but you two go off sailing." And I'd say, "Okay, well, if that's what you want, you know." And Sam and I were very good friends, but that was it. And Sam says how she used to say to him, "Now, don't forget, Sally has 2 children, and do you know those children?" I mean, she was really working at making sure he was okay. That was so Jane. We had been friends, but we became closer at that time. And I took a course in something called therapeutic touch, which is you don't touch the people, but you're kind of feeling energies and getting them to settle down and everything. And I used to do that. I did it primarily so I could be with Harper doing it. And she loved that. I would go over and do that.
Sal's capacity to comfort Jane, it added, it extended, it gave another dimension to whatever I could bring. She would oscillate from a mode of anger and kind of the suppressed rage to one of well, another day, you know, for the moment I'm feeling all right. Boy, she set high standards, I'll tell you. When my time comes, I'll think about Jane. Can I do as well?
I'm so glad that I was able to be with Jane that final year. It led me into hospice work. I ended up being a hospice person after that. And for the two of us, it was such a beautiful experience just to share that love that we shared with each other. And I lost a very dear friend. And to be there afterwards with Sam, I mean, I wouldn't change anything, really. People have said to me since then, "Aren't you a little jealous when Tam talks about Jane?" I said, why would I be jealous? I mean, she was my dear friend. I can see a woman coming on the picture that had never known Jane, and he, you know, talked about her, but I'm not jealous. I know Sam loves me. And just because someone dies doesn't mean we stop loving them. We still love them as long as we live. Love doesn't die because someone dies.
Sam built Mondiamo 42 years ago in his garage in Hollis, New Hampshire. And over the years, he has come to think of her as his partner on the water.
Okay.
All right, very good,
Wow.
guys. Good food, good food.
Oh, so peaceful now.
Isn't it?
Well, with these two, that's the beauty of this rig.
Both Sally and Sam love to sail. Sam, an expert seaman, grew up sailing on the waters around Chebeac Island.
I'm competently placed. I feel that I'm a master of what I'm doing. And it's a deeply welcoming experience. A vast majority of the time, the boat is at peace and therefore I'm at peace. And most of the time, that feeling is always with me. It becomes a way for me to measure my sense of well-being instantly, right away. Now we have a gentle rocky motion. If we're blowing a little bit harder, we would have the seas build up and you'd feel the boat under its stern and you say, my God, that's good. That really feels good.
About 3 or 4 years into my marriage with Sal, I had a long, complicated dream. It was close to being an hallucination. It wasn't. It was a very positive experience and ended on this strange image. And the image was of being placed what I call the cradle of the deep by the kind of this anima figure, that she placed me gently in this foamy cradle. And I didn't understand what it was about. And I tried to re-enter the dream. I went through all the various tools that I've learned. And I was thinking about that dream, and I said, now, Sam Ballard, come on, you know what's wrong. Can you think of a more unstable place to be than have some broad put you in a foamy cradle in the middle of the ocean? I've got it. Talk about an aha experience. That was just amazing. That night, I went to my church on Chebeac, which is the Chebeac Island Boatyard, and there's a particular spot in the boatyard where you can see due south towards out to sea, and there's a lovely lighthouse out there. This strange happening. And the happening was, I was with a group of people, couldn't tell who they were, I didn't know them, but they were here in kind of a celebratory way. And the purpose of was to take a picture of me standing on Halfway Rock. Sam, old boy, you've got it. You have not been all that stable. You have handled it reasonably well. I didn't know who the we would be. We're here to take a picture of that.
It was a sense of celebration. This slow-witted fellow finally got it. He's going to be all right.
This was at a time in my life where all my Victorian upbringing said to me, and many other aspects of my life, the last thing I should be doing is jumping to bed with Jane's dear friend. And as I developed this understanding of the dream imagery, I could feel the sense that this was a process of not lying to myself, but it was a process that I could proceed with this relationship and find something of value. Because Lord knows I've been through this before, and it was destructive. I had this sense that this could be constructive. Should I be terrified of that imagery? It certainly could be terrifying. But that didn't make sense because I wasn't in a terrible place. I was now, in my relationship with Sal, in an extraordinarily beautiful and powerful place. The reason you dig at these, the reason I dug at them, is I found ever so slowly they were revealing processes that I didn't understand until I broke the image open, because this was about my rebirth. It was not about death, it was about life. I think the thing that came through was, look, you're not going to go ahead unless you allow yourself to be vulnerable. If you're not going to allow that, then you're dead. The imageries are there to inform us, but boy, you sure have to work at them. You sure have to work at them.
Well, the theme was always trying to understand how he's gotten to where he got. How did this all happen? And that's always been there. And I'm not sure he still knows, even after writing that whole book. I'm not sure he's really come to any grand conclusion. I think it's just, he doesn't quite understand how it all happened. And I think he thought by writing the memoir, he might begin to understand, but I'm not sure we ever understand those things in life. I think Sam has spent most of his life trying to figure things out. And that's what kind of person he is, and trying to search for answers and stuff. And I keep saying, Sam, there are no answers, you know. So
I'm 74 years old. If I look at it psychologically, I would say that I am a lot older. If you say time is the length of the road traveled, I can look back and say, there was this part of the journey, I got to this point, realized that I could make a change that had risk, but I was willing to take the risk, move on. And these were clearly life and death issues. The fact that I could look back at the paths I had been down, I would certainly say that's been a long path. I tend to translate that in terms of I'm an older person than I would have thought I'd be. And in being that way, it puts me completely at peace. 24 years to 74 years, the really important change is set aside fear, set aside expectations. I can be challenged directly and feel comfortable, even grateful for the challenge. This is where I want to be. When I was 24, I was trying to make myself over so that the world I find myself in, I will be okay. At 74 years, it isn't necessary. It isn't necessary for me to feel at peace. I think that I like being where I'm at, and if this is the cost of what it got me to get here, then I'd say, so be it, so be it. I made it, and this is just one hell of a good place to be.
Oh, it's a wonderful time of life, and because for me, I feel that way too about our marriage, but for me, having moved here on the island, I am so thrilled. I really made the decision, because Sam was kind of talking about it, and I kept saying, oh, I'm not sure I want to go up there in the winter time and all that. But when we came up here for the summer before we moved here, I have, as I say, been involved in hospice work, and Sam's niece, who's a nurse, came in one day and said, Sally, there's a woman on the island whose sister is dying, and she really needs someone to help her. Bereavement was my specialty. And I went, boing, baby, this is a message that I'm supposed to be here. And that was what changed my mind. And sure enough, a lot of that I have used since I moved here. And it's just, it was meant to be, to live here. So it's a wonderful time of life. Wonderful. I'm retired, and yet I'm doing things I love too, even more so. It's a great time of life. Well, I think the day Sam and I were married would be nice to live over, because we were married right here, right in front of this window, with all our children here with us, except for Andrea, who was in the Peace Corps, and friends sitting all around here while we were married by a very dear friend. I remember the night before he went over to pick up the kids who were waiting over there, and he went over in Mandiamo and brought them all back. You know, we were singing, I was playing music, and it was just, it was a beautiful day. Beautiful, beautiful day. I went to sleep that night and I dreamt there was a door, I think, and I opened the door and there was this shroud, like this covering a woman. And then I realized it was Jane, and she said, "Don't forget me. Don't forget me." And of course I said I won't to myself, or I won't be visited to her. And that meant exactly to me what it said. And obviously we haven't forgotten her. And it was interesting, I thought that she came to me and said that. Because I'm a very skeptical person, and I went, is there anything after life? I don't know, and that's all right if I don't know. Well, I'll find out someday. But the fact that she came to me and said, "Don't forget me," I thought was lovely. It was just lovely. And she was sad. She and I was sad too, but that was, I'm not the dreamer that Sam is. I don't have that many strong dreams, but boy. I'd like to be right here, if possible, maybe in that den on a bed looking out over the ocean until I couldn't do that anymore. And I know sorrow. I mean, people are going to be sad and sorrowful, and that's all right. We'll cry together and talk about maybe the life we've lived together. But the inevitability of it, you can't escape it.
The way I end the book is where Sal and I talk to each other about the fact we will both be buried with Jane in the little cemetery in Hollis. It is natural to us. It's what we care about. It's a way of sort of bringing us back together. I didn't know this is what I wanted, but now that it's here, it's extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. And it's so personal.